Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Live with RYE. I'm your host, RYE, and I am so thrilled you are joining me today. Today is such a special day. Not only is it my first episode back of 2021, it's also the first episode of season 2. I am so excited for this new season. I have tons of special guests coming your way over the next few weeks, and I am super excited to bring them to you. And hey, if there's someone you'd like to see on the show, let me know. Drop me a line on social media or on my website. And if they're in the Broadway or pop culture or entertainment world, I'd love to hear from them. And let's get started. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and subscribe to my YouTube channel so you never miss an episode of Live with RYE. And if you're joining us on Facebook, hit that thumbs up button and give us a like or a heart so that I know you're watching and give us love. Also, be sure to follow me across social media. I'm at RYE the News Guy on Twitter and Facebook. And on Instagram, I'm at RYE Myers. You'll also see my website scrolling across the bottom of the screen as well. Head over there to rewatch all episodes of Live with RYE and to see all of my other exclusive content, including the launch of my new production company, RYE Entertainment. You'll also see my Venmo handle scrolling across the bottom of the screen as well. If you are so inclined, I would love if you would consider supporting this show, Live with RYE, and the platform RYEthenewsguy.com. Anything you can give would mean so much to me. On a side note, I just want to thank you all for your continued love and support of the show and everything that I'm doing. It means so much to me. And without you, I couldn't do this. So thank you. Now, help me welcome my very special guests, today's first guest of season 2, CEO and co-founder of Goldstar and Stellar Tickets, Jim McCarthy. Hey, Jim.
Hey, RYE. How's it going?
It's going good. How about you?
I'm good. I didn't know I was the opening episode of season 2. I feel like we should be resolving some kind of cliffhanger. You know what I mean? Like somebody was about to be swallowed up by all the zombies, and then how did they get out of it, or something like that?
Right. Oh, that's right. So that's going to be your job then. How do we solve that? They were eaten up by zombies, and
well, it looked like they were being eaten by zombies, but actually they escaped into the van, or I don't know, the van. Let's just say there was a van there. And
I love it.
They got away.
I love it. Well, I'm so happy that you're my first guest for season 2. It's super exciting. Can you tell us, let's start at the beginning. Can you tell me where the idea to create Goldstar came from?
Goldstar is, we started in 2002. We actually started working on it in 2001. Mm-hmm. I hesitate to ask, but how old were you in 2001, right?
I was, I believe, 6 years old. I was in first grade.
Okay. All right. So I knew I was in for something like that, but still. Yeah. So in those days, the live entertainment world, theater, music, and so forth, was really barely even online. Mm-hmm. People, this is a true story. Some of you won't believe it, but most people still called phone number to buy tickets.
What is that? What is a telephone?
Right. What's a telephone? Talking to a person. And what night what date would you like to go? October 6th. You had to say the whole thing. And so, it was pretty obvious. I had been in the internet, and my co-founders too had been in the internet business for a few years, knew e-commerce really well. And it was pretty obvious that there are all these shows that weren't full and all these people who wanted to go out to more shows. And we thought the internet could do a pretty good job of putting those people together. And so over the course of a few months that included 9/11, we worked on the business plan and launched on Valentine's Day in 2002.
Wow. And when you first started, was it specifically just for the New York market, or did you?
No, we started in LA. It was only in LA for about a year and a half or so. Mm-hmm. And then gradually expanded. Actually, New York, I think we opened in 2007 in New York. So it was a few years before we got to New York. We surrounded New York, like an invading army, and then we
took over.
Pushed our way. Exactly. Yeah.
I love that. Well, Stellar has done so much, and they're a big part of the community when there was live shows happening, and Goldstar was up there. Unfortunately, now we are in a pandemic, and with that, while there's been a lot of sadness and, our industry is on hold for live events, you actually pivoted and you launched Stellar Tickets during the pandemic. Was it always planned to launch this service? And how did you come up with launching Stellar Tickets?
No, it was definitely not a plan, although we've been involved in a couple of ways in the idea of virtual events for a while. We actually, Goldstar made a small investment in a company called Concert Window all the way back in 2014, which was one of the first sort of, websites, services that enabled people to do shows online. And it was a little bit ahead of its time. And then also on TEDx Broadway, which, as you know, I'm the co-organizer of TEDx Broadway.
Yeah.
We have had speakers almost every year since 2012 talking about online events or remote events. Even all the way back in the very first TEDx Broadway, we had David Sable, who was at the National Theater Live. He ran the National Theater's live program, which at that time was in movie theaters around the UK.
Wow. Talk
about what a great idea it was for people to be able to see your show, even if they didn't happen to be able to get into the building, right? So we've had people. So I think there was I was like subconsciously leaving myself a little, trail of breadcrumbs or whatever. And when this started, the team put a lot of thought into what are the opportunities available to us, and we looked around and saw that people were beginning to do. Once we got over these really sort of bad, Zoom-based events where, free, not very good events, people started to do these really interesting things in like April, of last year. And we started to see that the time may be actually coming where people in the live entertainment industry can really take this medium very seriously and get a lot of benefits from it. It's just, to me, it's kind of like a lucky break. It's kind of like the thing that has been needed in the business for a long time. So unfortunately, it took a pandemic to really open up that door, but here we are.
Yeah. Well, it is much needed. And as you said, I mean, it's the way of the future. And I think unfortunately, the pandemic, I think, took us to realize that we, streaming needed to be incorporated into live entertainment of some place, and look at you for, creating it. I have to say, I did actually watch, I think it was the Doo-Wop project that was $3 tickets. I saw that show and I was very impressed with the user interface, how Stellar Tickets worked. And it was not just your, regular virtual event. I mean, audience could interact. You had emojis you could send up on the screen.
Yeah.
It was very impressive. And I loved the layout and how everything was formed. And it was like you were literally watching the show. You were just at home in your pajamas. It wasn't a bad Zoom recording. It wasn't a, bad connection. And so with that, I had that experience, but what can audience expect when they purchase tickets through Stellar? And can anyone go on and choose in a specific event, or does it have to be for a specific program?
Well, you can go buy any tickets that are available on stellartickets.com. Right. So that's open to the public. From the point of view of somebody who wants to produce a live show, you can also do it basically all on your own. I mean, Stellar is a platform that if you want to, it's completely DIY. You could go in there and create $1 million show without ever talking to us. On the other hand, we can be helpful to you in a bunch of ways. So if you're thinking about producing a show, you should check out workwithstellar.com. That kind of breaks it down from that side of it a little more, or just, find me, ask RYE, he'll connect. Yeah. We'll get you there. Yeah. Because I think a lot of people, are trying to figure out what their take on online events is. And there's a lot of opportunity as soon as you start thinking about it like it's a whole new medium. Take what you can do, take your skills, take your abilities, take your organization's strengths, and start from the ground up. Like, what would a great online event be? It's less about filming whatever you normally do, although you can do that too. Right. And more about thinking like what's something you just build it from the ground up to be fun as an online event. You know what I mean? Yeah.
So it doesn't have to necessarily, you don't need to have a multi-million-dollar production to do it. You can have this creation and still do it sort of low budget, but still use Stellar as the platform for it.
You definitely can. And, with the technology being so good these days, for relatively little money, you can film something, put something together that looks pretty darn good.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing, right? Like if you think about how to, how far you can really stretch, your production dollar, you can get some pretty great looking stuff for not very much money. And if you can build an audience for that, these events can be just really profitable if you do it right.
Yeah.
Because a worldwide audience, right? You're not limited people
Right.
can buy tickets from anywhere.
Yeah, and I guess that's my next question too. Is do the shows on Stellar, they're live and recorded? Do they stick around for a bit, or do some have different expiration dates? Are some only like live events only, and you can only catch them for one night? Do some have sort of like an on demand where you can go and watch them anytime?
Yeah, it's up to you. If you're producing the show, it's up to you to decide whether you want it to just be live, you want it to be available after the fact. So there's a lot of options. A lot of people do. It's kind of cool to have it be live when it's live, and then to have a window after that in case you missed it. In case you missed it.
Yeah.
It's the ICYMI, factor, right?
Yes.
I darn it, I wasn't there, but I paid for the ticket. You can't do that with live events either, right? You can't do that with in-person events.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
And what I found so cool was, again, the reactions that I believe in that sense it was live. I believe that the audience could see of people sending the applause, the hearts, and the comments. Also is nice too, because you do sort of get a little bit of a live feeling that people can see, and you still feel like there's audience right there.
Yeah, well, and the other thing is that if you're creating an event, you can actually produce custom emojis for the reaction. So we've had people produce their own sort of special emojis just for their show, which is very fun.
Yeah, I love that.
I'm looking forward. I think we should have an custom emoji of the year award, when we do, you know what I mean? Like when we do the Stellar annual awards, which we haven't planned to do yet, but that's a good idea. Take a note of that, somebody.
Yes.
One of the awards should be custom emoji of the year. I don't know.
I like that. That's actually that's a good idea, and gets people to be very creative.
So surprised, right?
I would have never thought of that. I mean, that's hey, listen, it's 2021 now. Anything goes. Like, listen, a custom emoji of the year. If that's, I love it. I love it.
Good work.
We were talking about streaming earlier. Do you think that it will, when theater returns in person, be it on Broadway, be it regional and touring, will play a big part of how theater operates going forward? And if so, how do you see it tying in with live person events? Do you think that it will fatigue a lot of shows, or do you think that many people will be just as interested to, let's say, see the show live or pre-recorded and then come to New York or whatever city or town to also see it as well?
Well, you're a big theater fan, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I am.
So here's the question for you. Suppose there were a big show opening in LA, right? So you live in New York normally, I assume?
Yes.
Right? Okay. So suppose a big show opening in LA, and on the opening night, you could watch it for $25, $30 or whatever, and it was a big, glossy, awesome production on Stellar, of course, which means it's fun to watch. Would you be interested in that?
I would, yes.
Now there you go. I think you're not alone. I think a lot of people, and then you can imagine that from wherever, right? Like one of the examples that I think about a lot is if you're a fan, and we're talking to, I know your audience, there are a lot of theater fans in your audience, so we'll kind of talk maybe more about theater, but it applies to everything, music, everything. I think a lot about the kind of work that some of the small theaters around the country and around the world do.
Yeah.
Right. So if you imagine that just imagine that you're the most creative, the best small theater in the world, and you're based in, I don't know, like Portland, Oregon, right?
Right.
Like, well, you could, however great you are, there's kind of a limit to the number of people who can see what you're doing, because it's a small theater and they have to come to Portland. Imagine what would happen if all of a sudden, via the tool of an online event and a platform like Stellar, you could actually reach a worldwide audience all the time. You could go from maybe 20,000 people a year see your work to literally millions seeing your work.
That's, yeah.
I mean, right? Because, again, going back to my example, if you heard that there was some really innovative, awesome small theater in Portland, Oregon, right, that was putting on some work that you could see, would you be interested in watching?
Yeah.
RYE the theater fan. I know you're RYE the news guy.
Right. I would, and especially if it's a show that is planning to be developed and to go elsewhere. I mean, if it was, if it's even an out of town and it's coming to New York, I mean, for me, I would still go see it in person because, I love the live experience. So, I got to see it on recorded or virtual. Now I get to go and see it again. I like that. And I hopefully this will save, I think, maybe also a lot of, as you said, smaller theaters too, that are trying to get people back and are maybe struggling. People can now watch, and this is another revenue stream for them, not just with big theaters too, but with the smaller theaters. I think that, they have so many options and so many abilities. I mean, I think it's also that cool aspect of you're watching the show live in person, and you never know, there could be another 5,000 people watching virtually that you don't know. Like, I think that's
it's amazing.
It is.
I have a prediction, which is that sometime in the next few years, because of the online event medium, there will be a small theater somewhere that has as many viewers as any theater in the world. They may be the most, if you count online and in person, there's going to be a small theater somewhere that will be the most attended theater in the world. That's my prediction. Someone's going to figure out a formula where 50 or 100,000 people a night are watching.
I totally agree. I think you're right. Yeah. I really do. What do you think Goldstar's role and Stellar's role will be as we welcome back Broadway and welcome back the future of live events? What part will they play in it, particularly Goldstar, with, as we welcome back in-person events?
Well, Goldstar, I think our goal is to keep doing what we've been doing for, 18 plus years, which is give people a great place to find an event and save you money and give you the best buying and service experience that there is in the ticketing world. Right. So, we think there's going to be a huge, I think all of us agree that once we're clear of some of this craziness, there's going to be a huge rush back into the venues. And it may take a little while and it may be sort of gradual, but this time next year, I think it's going to be pretty hard to get a good seat to a lot of places. I think we all agree with that.
Oh, I agree.
Goldstar is going to be one of the places that venues are going to want to turn to let people know they're back. It's happening. Come on down. Get down to the theater. Get down to the concert hall. Get down to the whatever thing. Performing Arts Center. The puppet. I don't know what are puppet shows done. Puppet theaters. Puppet.
Sock puppet show,
Puppet parlors. Are they parlors? Yeah. There's like pizza parlors, funeral parlors, ice cream parlors. I think we need another parlor type, maybe puppet parlors.
Puppet parlors. That's a good one.
I don't know. But anyway, Goldstar is going to be telling people, get back, we're going to help the venues and the shows let people know that they're back and they should buy. Stellar is committed to helping develop the medium of online events.
Yeah.
During and of course after the pandemic. The way I see it, this is one of the upsides of this whole disaster that we've been living through as an industry, and that is that we've quickly advanced 10 years in the adoption of these tools, which means that finally the kinds of tools that all the rest of the entertainment industry has had to reach way more people are now available to us. Some people are going to figure out sooner than others how to use those and that they should use those.
Yes.
And everybody else is eventually going to be playing catch up. This is the thing. In 5 years, everyone will be doing a combination of online and in-person events. Some people will be playing catch up, and some people will have changed their place on the totem pole for the better because they're going to jump into it 100%, now and figure it out faster.
Yeah. And I certainly hope Broadway does that as well. And it's funny, in talking with these digital events and stuff, I also look at, this summer we saw Hamilton come on Disney Plus, and there's the Broadway shows that are being recorded for Netflix and Hulu. And what amazed me, in talking about streaming and shows, because the thing on Broadway was always like, oh, if you put it on video, no one's going to come see it in the theater. They're not going to want to go and spend but what's amazed me is, and I guess maybe also because there is no theater, but I've seen so many people who are like, I can't wait to get to New York and see Hamilton. I never saw it before. I saw it, on Disney Plus, and I'm going to run and get. And it was very interesting to see that there is not fatigue or, there. I know in the industry there's been this sort of preconceived, like, well, if we put it on video, it's going to, nobody's going to want to come see the show. And I think if you got a good product, as you said, you're going to give people that taste. And if it's a very good product, we'll get people excited to come and see it in person.
This one bugs me a lot. I'm sitting here going because this one, but I don't know where people got this idea from.
Yeah.
Right. Like, what other examples are there of, I got a taste of something and I liked it and I never wanted any more. Right. Like,
right.
like,
yeah.
famously, as you walk around a grocery store and they give you a sample of something and it's delicious, you go like, that's all I need. I never want any more of that chocolate. I mean,
Exactly.
where did this idea come from? I don't know. I mean, the example that I give, are you a sports fan?
I am not. No, I do know of sports, but I'm not a sports person.
All right. So, but most people, the NBA is one that people kind of know. In America, at least, most people know. So here's my thought experiment, which I talk about sometimes. We'll do it again here. Okay. In 1985, or I should say in 1985, the NBA, National Basketball Association, was popular for the first time in a while. A lot of people don't know this, but in the 70s, the NBA Finals games were actually broadcast on tape delay. Isn't that weird? Like they weren't even broadcast live because people didn't care. So Dr. J came into the NBA, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, and then a little bit later, Michael Jordan. And all of a sudden the NBA was great and all of a sudden they were cool.
Right.
So the thought experiment is this: in 1985, it's still on the big time on the rise, but not where has gotten to since then.
Mm-hmm.
And so imagine that you're the commissioner of the NBA, and your VP of marketing or whatever comes in and says, "I have this idea. We now know that people are really enjoying going to our games, and the ticket prices are starting to rise, and we're getting good. We're getting the games are selling out, and people are loving it, and such and such. I have an idea. I think we need to make sure that people value the ticket to an NBA game. We want to make sure they continue to want to come and to continue to want to pay money. So what we need to do is stop putting the games on TV. Because then people will not be, they'll want to pay money to buy tickets to come see the games. Does this seem like a good idea or not a good idea to you? RYE, the basketball guy. What do you think? Good idea, bad idea?
Well, I mean, knowing what I know now, I think it's a bad idea.
It's a terrible idea. It's a terrible idea, right? Like 35 years later, of course, the scenario plays out. The opposite happened. There's a million ways to see the NBA. And does it make the in-person, are the tickets dirt cheap and nobody wants to go see the game? Normally, of course, right? No, they're more expensive than ever, right? They're more expensive than ever. And that's because as you said, if you've got something good, exposing people to it makes them want more, right? Yes. Part of the problem, I think, with not just Broadway, but theater and sort of live entertainment overall, is this false belief that the only reason people pay is because it's scarce, but that's not true. Like there have been a lot of great examples of people who've done awesome online events with tens of thousands of people or more. One example, the Geffen did a great show over last summer called the Present. Did you see it?
I didn't. No.
It was so much fun. And there's one called The Future now. That's the same guy, Helder Guimaras, doing a similar show. Anyway, at the end of a 6-month run of doing these small shows, they small versions of it. They did a very big version of it on Stellar, where I don't know, it was 7,000 or 8,000 people were watching this illusionist performance live. And so, of these thousands of people who watched this last show, the Geffen said that more than 75% of those people had never been to the Geffen. So if you think about the power of that, so all of the thousands, so the equivalent of like the venue many times over, right? Mm-hmm. Filled with people who'd never been to the Geffen. Now ask yourself this question: when the shows resume at the Geffen, do you think those people are more or less likely to go to the Geffen?
I think they're more. Yeah.
More. Yeah. Right. It's just obvious, right? So I think people get in their heads a little bit about this, that it's a little bit of a fear-based thing, or maybe it's I don't know what it is, but I'm just, to all the Broadway people out there, theater people out there, and everybody else too, but I'm specifically talking to theater people right now. You are more than worth watching twice. You are worth watching on screen. You are worth making a trip to New York or LA or San Francisco or Tokyo or London or wherever the show is, and seeing the show again.
Yes,
that's a big message, right?
It is.
It's worth watching once. It's worth watching twice. A great show is worth watching. I mean, what's the show you've seen more than any other, RYE? What's the show you've seen like the maximum number of times?
I guess since I've been in New York, I would say it's Come From Away musical. It's Come From Away. I've seen it 3 times.
3 times. Okay. Would you go again?
Yes, 100%. In fact, it's on my mind that that might even be one of the first shows I return to, depending what comes back first.
Would you watch an online version of it if you could right now?
100%. Yeah, yes, I would.
And like, you live in New York, which means you can just toddle down to the theater. I know it's not necessarily cheap, but I mean, normally you can just toddle down to the theater and see it. Suppose something happened and RYE, the news guy, became RYE, the like Australian news guy, and you had to move to the other side of the world. You couldn't just go down to see it. So if the opportunity arose to see it online, probably even more likely you'd want to see that, I assume.
It 100%, and it also goes with music and concerts too. I mean, and I hate to say this, everyone's always surprised. I saw my first concert about a year ago. Ever, I had never seen a concert before until 2018, I think it was, and it was I waited all my life. I was so excited. But
what was the concert? I thought you were gonna.
It was Rod Stewart and Cyndi Lauper. So both great, but I'm just. Well, that wasn't what I was going to guess. I know. I was supposed to have been Elton John, but they came up. Their tickets. I had Elton John booked, and then their tickets came up, and I was like, "Oh, let me do it."
I see.
My thing is, I've seen these performers YouTube videos of their concerts and clips, all the time. And when I moved to the city and started seeing concerts, it was like, I'm still going to go, even though I saw them perform this on YouTube, or even though I've seen a clip on the internet. Like, it's still, there's nothing like being in person. No. And I think it stinks that well, now they're not, but it stinks that theater was so far behind with that aspect.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's not. I mean, the concert business has been a little more aggressive on this, but a lot of people are sitting on the sidelines there too.
Yeah.
My one of my biggest fears is people just return. The mindset is like, oh, let's forget all that progress we made and just return to normal.
Right.
That'd be a shame, because if you're in the live entertainment business and you really dial in how to do online events, you can take the business model that you have now, which is dicey. Let's all be honest about live entertainment and theater in specific. Like, it's an all right business model. You really need to succeed before it gets good. But with online events, you can change that dynamic. You can actually make it, especially if you're already producing the event, an online event, a hybrid online in-person event can get to profitability much more quickly because there's no limit to your audience. And anyway, don't throw that away. It's a gift that we've been given that makes the business model of live entertainment much more attractive, much more viable. And it allows you to get people paid and get great art on the stage and explore new things, like fund things that need to be out there in the world. And I just think it's too good of an opportunity to pass up. But part of it's in the minds. People need to have the right mindset about it.
Exactly. Well, what is your vision for 2021 and the return of arts and live theater in the year ahead for the entertainment and music industry and the art industry, shall we say?
So the way that I think about it is that it's kind of like in 2020, we were going into a tunnel. 2021 is, so we sort of like, maybe, I don't know exactly where we are, but 2021 is about driving out of the tunnel, right? We're not out of the tunnel yet. 2022, right. I think, is the year where we're out of the tunnel. It's the first full. So 2021 is going to be weird. I mean, this is the reality. It's going to be a very weird year. Put aside all the political craziness or whatever. It's going to be a weird year, even in the live entertainment business. And all the related businesses. Specifically, it's going to be a weird year because we're going to have, hopefully sooner rather than later, we're going to have this sort of strange thing where there's an immunized world and a non-immunized world, and they're going to be kind of bumping up against each other,
right,
for the next 6+ months. And the existence of the immunized world is going to start making certain things possible again. It's going to be a little uneven. Yeah. One of the things that I've been saying to people in the business is you need to start putting a date in the calendar for your shows for your first shows back. You can't wait until it's resolved, because then you got the lag time to get the show out there. So, what everybody who produces live entertainment should be doing right now is kind of like putting their finger in the air and saying, well, okay, we think maybe July is possible, or whatever, right? June, July, August, whatever. We know it's sort of plus or minus, probably 2 or 3 months around July.
Yeah.
So it's a good idea to start thinking, okay, if we put a stake in the ground and say we're gonna put on a show in July, with the understanding that maybe it'll slip a little, you can move a July show back to August or September, but you can't really move a July show up to June or May or June. You know what I mean?
Right.
And the planning has to start. If people wait until July, let's say, to start planning it, well, then it's December, October, November, December kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you've lost the whole year, right? So people
Right.
have got to start planning. They've got to start putting dates in the calendar. Customers are going to know that those could slip a little bit, but it's not like before. Like at the beginning of this, I thought it was crazy. People were saying, oh, the April date's been pushed to June, or it's like that date is not going to happen.
I was one of those optimistic that thought it was. Every time it got pushed back, I was like, I know we'll be out by September, and then it was like after they pushed it to the new, so I was like, oh yeah, glass half full. What can I say?
Yeah, well, there's that.
No, you're right. You're right.
But now, so then people kind of feel, I think a lot of people feel burned by that, but they can't allow that to stop. They got to think forward on this thing and say, well, if we want to have a show in August, let's say, when do we need to be doing, what? You got to kind of work backwards from August or whatever your target date is, and then doing the things that are necessary to actually do a show then.
Yes.
And, it's going to be bumpy, but it's going to, getting the machine cranked back up is a fair amount of work.
Yes.
So you can't sit on your hands. And meanwhile, you should be figuring out your stance on online events. There's still enough time between now and then that you can still get really good at this online thing, make some money, put some people back to work, create some great art, have a lot of fun. People should not start saying, well, we're just going to sort of sit on the sideline until everything's back. It's not a time for sitting on the sideline. It's a time for planning. It's a time for building the online, skill set and putting some shows on.
Yes, it is. And producers, take note of this, because Jim, you are very, very right. And I agree. It's easier to say, and we are in a better place. It's easier to say, oh, I'm due June or July, but we got to push it back a little bit. Even though most of these places, New York is one of the states that is reliant on whenever our governor says we can return, but pretty much a good date if it's, a late summer or a fall. So start planning now. Yeah. Because it instead of waiting, because that's I would hate to see that. And that's something that, you bring that up at such a good point that, you just delay things even more. You delay people out of work more, and then you're rushed, and then things are sloppy, I think, And
you can't afford to burn an extra 4 or 5 months just because we didn't plan, right? It's just too costly given everything to we messed up and now we got to wait another 4 months to get through our planning cycle to get the event going. It's just not acceptable. So, people have got to think in terms of this. And it's funny because actually we're talking about things getting better right now. It's terrible, right? Yeah. Like that's the weird thing about this is that it's as bad as it's been, or perhaps worse right now, but the path out is clear. Whereas in the past, when we've had these cycles of it's a little better, it's a little worse, there was no path out. It was just cycle, so.
And for those, and even today, our governor here, Governor Cuomo, even spoke about the return of the arts in the city and in the state, and saying, we need to bring culture back in some sense. And so, it as you said, this is not a time to sit on your hands and to just anything. It's, it's nice to see, that it's going to come roaring back. And even our governor has said, in some capacity, we got to get it back. And it's bad right now. It is. But as you said, we have the vaccine, and we know that there's at least a light at the end of the tunnel. It may not be out of it until 2022 fully, but we're getting out of that dark tunnel.
Right.
So, what advice do you have for others who are looking to start a business or an online platform of sorts that includes monetization, sort of like what you've done with Goldstar and Stellar?
This, you mean for people who are thinking of starting?
Yes, like a business of any sorts, whether they're starting to a company to whether it's in the entertainment field or not, but starting sort of like what you did and founded a company and become CEO. And in my opinion, it's a great time to start a business right now. I know that sounds weird, but there's a lot of literature and evidence to suggest that companies that are started in crisis times or recessions or other challenging times
tend to be better than companies that are started when things are riding high. There's a ton of evidence. Goldstar is an example of a company who started in a crisis, in the 9/11 and then the recession that followed that. And that's because the lessons that you learn, or the DNA that you develop as a company when, it isn't easy sledding, is more resilient, right? You figure out how to really create value. I mean, there have been some things over the years where there have been kind of these mini booms or fads for different kind of businesses. And so all of a sudden you've got hundreds of the same kind of business popping up. So good example of this is when Groupon came along, they sort of created this model of the tipping point and this daily deal and all this stuff. Over the next, 12, 18 months, there were probably 100 clones. Yeah. And there was a period of time when anybody who wanted to do a daily deal business, someone would give them funding or whatever. There are literally none of those left except Groupon now, right? There's literally just a garbage pile of companies, and they were operating. They were sort of starting their businesses into a time when it was just like, like get the money, and that, I feel like if that's your frame of reference, and I went through this too, in the late 90s with the .com boom, where I could do a whole episode on the crazy stories of the .com boom in 1999. I mean, like, the money was ridiculous, but what was created by it was, of course, there were some great businesses, but 99% of the businesses that were created were just, like on a sugar high of money, and were complete garbage that got washed out, in 2000 by the recession. So it's, the opposite of that. This is one of those times where it's like, okay, the people, and I look around and I see people creating businesses that are really thoughtful, like survivor type businesses right now. People who've like really drilled down to, how do I do something for people that they can't live without, and that's worth money to them, and that whatever. I know there's going to be, 10 years from now, there'll be an article, or 8 years from now or something, there'll be an article about all the businesses that started in 2020 that are now worth X billions of dollars.
Oh yeah.
Because, they were born in this time of incredible challenge, and opportunity. So that it's a good time. My advice is, it's a good time. If you feel like this is a good time to go with a concept that you've developed, you're probably right.
That's great advice. Well, Jim, thank you so much for talking with me today. As we close out, is there anything that maybe I left out, or anything you'd like to touch on that or plug?
I have a question for you.
Of course.
So I told someone that I was coming on your show, and they said, RYE sounds like he's from Portland. This is why I was thinking about, are you from Portland?
I am not. No, I'm from New Jersey.
Okay. I just had to clear that up.
No. That's funny. I've never heard that before. Oh,
I don't know.
Not from Portland, but where can we find you, Jim? Where can they keep up with you and Stellar and Goldstar? Yeah, so
it's worth saying, if you are thinking about getting into the online event world, we're here to help. The platform is there for you to use. If you don't need our help, go to workwithstellar.com. But if you want some input, guidance, etc., on developing your online event concept, we are also here to help. You can also contact us at Work with Stellar. I'm on Twitter at Goldstar Jim, or I'm easy to find. I'm sort of everywhere. We really do work with people who have the potential to put on great events, to help them develop the concept, and we support them sometimes if you've invested in a couple of shows, and we're going to continue to do that. So love to hear from people, especially here's who I really want to hear from. I want to hear from people who have an idea about how to innovate in the online event world, and think that it's got huge potential, and want somebody who wants to help them, sell 1 million tickets. That's who I want to hear from. I'm love to get on my calendar with you and talk about that, because I think this is going to happen, and I want to be involved in it. I want to hear about it. So reach out to me if you're that person.
Yes, I agree. Reach out to Jim. You can find him. And Jim, please, you're welcome back on the show anytime, to connect. I love, it was great to speak with you and talk with you. And
season finale, obviously. I mean, we've done we've resolved the cliffhanger about the van.
Yes, we have. We'll have to do it season finale.
Set up the next cliffhanger.
And hopefully the season finale, which usually falls in like a spring or something when these shows do their things. Hopefully by then, maybe we're starting to see in-person events and we'll
actually see a show. Yeah, actually have some shows going. Yeah,
so
totally. I like it.
Thank you so much, Jim. I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today, and thank you everyone for watching.